Good morning, everyone, and welcome everyone to the SQL Saturday Toronto 2022. And I'm so happy to be here today to talk to you about one of the very new features in Power BI, which is Power BI Datamarts. This is the agenda for today's session. It's just a quick introduction about myself, and also we will be talking about very light introduction to the analytical data models in general as a background. Since we talk about data marts, so we have to also define what exactly the definition of the data mart in comparison to the data warehouse for sure. Then we will be talking about the data mart features inside Power BI. Then we will end up with the demo and question and answers. So a little bit background about myself. My name is Ashraf Ghonaim. I'm one of the MVPs in Canada, one of the 12 MVPs in data platform here in Canada. So my background is so diverse. I have been in this field for more than 20 years. My background is computer engineering, and also I did my MBA in strategy management. I'm a certified balance scorecard professional and PMP as well. I am actually the leader of the Power Platform user group community here in Toronto. So if you are not familiar or aware about this user group, we do have the Power Platform user group in Toronto, and we host it in the Meetup, so meetup.com. So if you are not a member, I do encourage everyone, if you are interested in Power Platform in general, to join the user group. The purpose of this user group is to build a community of practice where we share knowledge and experience with the audience. And it's totally driven by the community, and we also always welcome the speakers from the community. So if you are interested to speak in any of our future events, please stay in touch with me, and we'll definitely be happy to have you in our future events. I'm also participating in so many other events here, and as I said, I'm one of the Microsoft MVPs. We have in Canada, based in Canada, 12 MVPs in data platform, and I'm so happy to be one of them. I'm also the co-author of the Power BI MVP book. It's the first MVP book written by MVPs from all over the world. And 21 MVPs were involved in co-authoring this book, and every MVP wrote a specific chapter in this book. And the chapter I wrote in this book was about AutoML capabilities inside Power BI. So if you are interested in any of the topics here, every single chapter is like a standalone topic, and I do encourage you to check out this book. It's available on Amazon. I'm also the co-author of the Power BI, sorry, there's a duplicate of a slide here, but there's another book as well. It's called Microsoft AI MVP book. Let's go back again. And it's available in Amazon as well, written by AI MVPs from all over the world. And the chapter I wrote in this book was about the AI and cognitive services capabilities inside Power BI. So if you are interested in this topic as well, please check those books out in Amazon. So some key definition here, like what is the concept of business intelligence for those of you who are new to the whole world of business intelligence. So it's the broad definition, actually, it's a broad term that has the combination of different categories of the application and programs and technologies and processes for gathering, storing, analyzing, and providing access to data to help the enterprise user make better business decisions. Then we have another key concept here that we really need to make sure everyone is comfortable with, which is the data warehouse. Because if we talk about Datamart, we should also define talk about the definition of the data warehouse. So the data warehouse is an integrated time variant and non-volatile collection of data to support the management of decision-making process. So why do we need a data warehouse in any organization? Can anyone tell me why do we need a data warehouse, and what is the key value or the key value proposition for having a data warehouse in any organization? Can anyone talk about that, or feel free to interact? Yeah, please.
Finding different data sources from different applications and getting insights from it?
Exactly. So the key value here is integrated data source, combine different data sources into one centralized repository that combines the data from different systems. But why do we need a different database? Like, why we cannot just access the data in the transactional operational database. Why we need to have a separate database for that.
For predictions,
Yes.
can say store past data.
Historical data is one of the key values for sure to have a data warehouse. What else? Like, what is the key difference between a transactional database and data warehouse database? Why we need a database? Like, of course, tracking the historical changes over time is one of the key values to have a data warehouse in the organization. But what else is different between a transactional database and data warehouse database? So the one of the key fundamentals, the fundamental difference between a transactional database and data warehouse database is the data model behind it. Because the operational transactional database is very normalized to optimize the performance of the insert, update, and delete. This is the key value to have, or key value of having a very normalized data model in the transactional operational database to speed up the insert, update, and delete as quickly as possible. That's why it's very, very normalized. But because it's optimized to speed up the insert, update, delete, is not optimized to deal with the big amount of historical data from a reporting perspective and data retrieval perspective, because it's very normalized. If you want to track anything from the past, for example, you have to join so many tables to be able to get the data that you want from the transactional operational database. Why? Because it's very optimized, very normalized. So you have to join so many tables. On the other side, data warehouse model is a bit different because it's optimized for data retrieval and data query for reporting purposes. It's not optimized for insert and update delete because this is not the purpose of having a data warehouse model. The data warehouse model is optimized for reporting and data retrieval, as I said. And what is the name of the data model in the data warehouse? Can someone tell me what we call it? Yeah, it's a dimensional model in general, which is specifically, we are talking about the star schema. So we do some data transformation from a modeling perspective to convert the normalized database and the operational database, which we call it OLTP, to denormalize it and put it in the dimensional model. And basically, the dimensional model is, as our friend here said, it's star schema. That's a very common model. But however, there are so many other models when it comes to dimensional models. Snowflake is one of them as well. But the core concept of a dimensional model is we restructure the data in terms of the star schema. And why we call it a star schema? Because it looks like a star. We have a fact table in the middle and surrounded by dimensions. What is the purpose of the fact table? The fact table actually is the storage of all the business transactions that we have. While all the dimensions around the fact table are the dimensions that we need to use to slice and dice the data. So if we need to break down the data or collapse or drill down or roll up the data, we have this information categorized into the dimensions, like product category, product hierarchy, geographical location, zip code, to city, to province, to country, to continent, and so on. Those structure, we have it in the dimension, while the fact table has all the business transaction. Every single sales transaction, for example, it is stored in the fact table. The fact table is typically is the source for the business measure. So fact table can give us information about what is the total sales, what is the total quantity sold, and so on. But if we really need to slice and dice the data based on what product or what category or what country or which customer and so on, we have to join it with one of those or more than one of those dimensions to be able to have the intersection between those. Good question. So typically we do the data transformation when we move the data from the operational transactional database into the data warehouse. So we have a process in the middle, we call it ETL process, stands for? Excellent. So we do the transformation steps into the ETL process, which is the intermediate layer between the source table, source database, transactional operational database, and the data warehouse. Then any transformation will happen during this ETL process. Then we store the data in a cleaned way and the fact table and the dimensional model. Makes sense? So that's the whole value proposition of actually having enterprise data warehouse. So different data model, it's dimensional model. We store historical data. We do data transformation and data manipulation and data cleansing in the middle to actually move the data to the data warehouse. So if this is the definition of data warehouse, what is Datamart then? Exactly. So the focus for Datamart is it's a subset of the data warehouse that is very functional oriented. So if we have like the enterprise-wide data warehouse can be tackling the entire ERP system, for example, in the organization with so many functional areas, from HR, from finance, from sales, from marketing, and so on. The purpose of having a data mart in any organization is a subset of data that is very subject oriented and very functional oriented. Okay, so we can have a data mart for sales only or marketing only or HR only, because those are the purpose here of having data mart as a subset of the data warehouse, because we need to serve the functional team with the relevant information as fast as possible, because they don't care about the rest of the organization. It doesn't mean that there is no value for having an enterprise data warehouse. Of course we have, but there is a value because that's the only way to have like a complete picture of all the data spectrum from end to end across the organization. Because oftentimes we need to integrate data from sales with marketing, for example, and see the impact of marketing campaign on our sales transaction. How to get this data, because we have an enterprise data warehouse that has already marketing data and sales data. We need to see the impact of the turnover from HR on the sales transaction, for example. So we cross-bridge those data marts to answer those kind of questions. But sales team, 80% of their needs can be fulfilled with the sales data mart only, or marketing team, 80% of their needs can be fulfilled from the marketing data mart only. So the data mart is very similar to the data warehouse, except that it's a subset, it's a small set, it's just focused on functional or subject area rather than the entire scope of the data warehouse. So what is common between data mart and data warehouse? What is the common thing between those two? Subset, yes, but what is common? Is what? Easy access, that's okay, but what is the common when it comes to data modeling? Is it different data modeling? Sorry?
Model.
But is it different data model from data warehouse? No, it's still dimensional model. It's still facts and dims as well. So the common thing between a data mart and data warehouse, both are dimensional model. They are not normalized data model. They are both dimensional models. So this is basically the definition of the data mart and how it actually linked to the whole concept of data warehouse. So having saying that, what is Datamart inside Power BI, and why did we call it Datamart? So this is actually one of the new features that was recently announced back in May 2022, and Microsoft build. And I consider this as one of the game changers and the Power BI evolution journey, because it's the first time for us to actually have a place inside Power BI that can help us build the entire spectrum of our processes from end to end inside Power BI without the need to rely on anything external of Power BI. It's completely self-service analytics, which uses an Azure SQL database in the back end. But we don't need to deal with SQL Server or Azure SQL at all outside the Power BI, because it's totally managed from within Power BI itself. So we don't need to build anything outside Power BI. We can actually build the data mart inside Power BI completely from end to end, including the ETL process that extract the information from the data source all the way along to the destination. We actually, the key value here is we still use Power Query, which is the very easy, intuitive way to extract the data from the data source. So our ETL process in Power BI Data Mart is based on Power Query. Has anyone used Power Query in Power BI? No? Anyone used it? How intuitive, how easy it is based on your experience, my friend? Yeah. Is it easy? Is it, yeah. Yeah. So it's very easy, very visual driven, so you don't need to write extensive code. You may need to interfere with the code sometimes, but I would say 90% of the cases can be covered with the drag and drop capabilities that we have in Power Query, which is the core technology behind building the ETL process inside Power BI Datamart. And also, for the first time, the whole entire process from end to end can be managed through Power BI service on the cloud. So there is no need actually to use Power BI desktop at all. That's the first time to build a complete solution from end to end based on the browser on the cloud. So there is no need actually to go to the Power BI desktop, which can open the floor for Mac users, for example, because one of the challenges that we had in the past is Power BI desktop only run on Windows machine. But now we can build the whole solution from end to end in the browser, and no need actually to use Power BI desktop at all. What was the key value of having Power BI desktop for those of you who are experienced already with Power BI? Why we had to use Power BI desktop in the past at certain point in time? Can anyone tell me? Hmm? Sorry? Yeah, but you still can build a report in the cloud, but there was one missing piece in the cloud that we had to use Power BI desktop, which is building the data model inside Power BI, building the facts and dims, and build the relationship and add measures. So basically, we build a tabular model inside Power BI desktop before we push it to the cloud again. So we needed actually to use Power BI desktop to build a dimensional model and facts and dims and measures and DEX measures before we push it to the cloud. With this feature now, we don't need to go to the Power BI desktop at all, because as I said, we can build a complete model, including the facts and dims and measures and DEX measures inside the Power BI service in the cloud. I think it will be more clear when we cover that in the demo. So key features here for Datamart inside Power BI, we can create SQL server database within one click for free. For free, there is a caveat here, because we don't have to have any Azure subscription or any Azure service for us to be able to do the SQL, to build or provision the SQL Server database in Azure. And instead, based on the Power BI license that we have, we can build the Azure SQL Server within Power BI with no additional cost at all. So we don't have to have Azure subscription to be able to build the SQL Server inside Power BI. However, this feature is available only for people who have premium license, premium capacity, or at least a premium per user. So if you have premium capacity or premium per user, you will be able to have access to this feature and provision a built-in SQL Server inside Power BI with no additional cost, which is one of the very, very great benefit of having Power BI Datamart inside Power BI. Also, for the very first time, we can perform T-SQL and write SQL statement inside Power BI. That was not possible in the past. No one was able actually to write SQL statement to access the data inside Power BI, because data were only accessible in Power BI through the tabular model, and we had to use DAX to be able to access the data or verify the data or visualize the data. Now, for the first time, we can write SQL statement inside Power BI for data validation and data query. So if you are comfortable with SQL statement, you can write your SQL statement inside Power BI to get the data, which is another great feature as well. Most importantly, it enables business users to create data warehouse-like experience in Power BI without involving the IT department. This is one of the debatable statements, because here, the whole concept here is we are trying to push more and more self-service capabilities to the business people, because business people are the business subject matter experts, but they lack the technical expertise that can help them actually build the data market quickly. With this feature now, because it's very self-service and very self-guided process, it will open the floor for involvement, more involvement from the business users to build more and more data marts that is specific for their business needs within the organization itself. So the sales team can build their own data mart. Marketing team, they can build their own data marts without creating any additional pressure or having any bottleneck on the IT side to build for them the data mart. Because the underlying assumption here is we already have enterprise data warehouse. So just keep that. Does it have to be there? Not really, because you still can access the transactional OLTP database and build the data mart. But it's recommended as a best practice to have already in place enterprise-wide data warehouse. Then you can build your own self-service data mart on the top of the data warehouse, because that's the best way to guarantee that there is a consistency across the board when it comes to data transformation and data quality. Yeah.
Better to the flows, for instance?
That's a good question. There is a specific use case for data flows and specific use cases for data mart. You can have the data mart based on data flows. So you can have your data flows first, then based on the data flows, you can build your data mart on the top of that. Do you have to do that way? Not necessarily, because you still can bypass the whole steps in building the data flows and access the data mart. But the good thing about data flows is if you have certain tables that is reusable across the board, it's better to have a data flow for that than build a data mart on the top of the data flows. So it's not either or. You still can have data flows, then build a data mart on the top of the data flows. Make sense? Like, for example, date dimensions, for example. Date dimension can be consistent across the board. So it's better to have like data flow to build a date dimension. Then you can ingest that into the data mart without the need to rebuild the whole date dimensions inside the data mart. Because if you have it in Datamart, there is a chance that there will be some differences when it comes to the data dimensions from a Datamart to another within the organization. But if you have it in data flow, it's a consistent across the board, and everyone will be consuming and ingesting the same data dimensions across all the data marts in the organization. You're welcome. Yeah.
About building data mart. Data mart is the
Building a data mart on what? Sorry.
or data set, because you traditional one, we build the data mart side of the data warehouse, and then we build the data set in Power BI, the PBIX file, right? So after using these things,
Yep.
you are talking about instead of building a mart in the data warehouse, you are building a mart in the Power BI,
Yes.
and then build a data set out of the mart.
Yes, the data set will be generated as a result of the process of building the data mart. So we still deal with data sets because the data set eventually is the tabular model, right? That has already the tabular model, which is the dimensional data model. We still deal with data sets, but the recommendation now, based on this new feature, is not to do it the old way, because the old way we had to do data flow or Power Query, then build the data set, then access the data set and build the report on that. The new process now, the recommendation now based on this, which will have impact on the future architecture, is to have Power Query ingesting the data from the data source, build the data mart, because the data mart now has a SQL server as a central repository of your data. Then, as a part of the process of building the data mart, a data set will be automatically generated in this process. So we still deal with data sets. But instead of the data set is dealing directly with Power Query, now we have intermediate layer, which is the SQL server fully managed, provisioned by Power BI as an intermediate layer, and we have the data stored already in this SQL server. Because one of the biggest benefit now is this intermediate SQL server layer is not only accessible by Power BI, because it can be accessible by any other tool to actually access the same data that Power BI is using. For example, we can use Management Studio, the SQL Server Management Studio. Or we can use any other reporting mechanism or reporting tool to access the same data that is Power BI is using. So we have consistency across the board. We can have Excel directly accessing the SQL server inside Power BI. In the past, we didn't have that. The only way, if you push the data to Power BI, it's only available for Power BI. But now we are opening the floor for more reporting and management tool to access the same SQL server. That's a good question.
So we are going to have two copies of the same data inside the Power BI premium.
It's not two copies.
Data set.
Sorry?
A data mart and data set. So
Yes.
it's going to be two copies
Yes.
of data.
It's not exactly copies, because in the SQL server, we have a relational database. It's a relational table. That's why we can write SQL statement. Then we have the data set, which will allow us to write DAX code. So we have the best of both. It's relational, still relational because it's SQL Server based. So you can write a SQL statement or have any other reporting tool or reporting mechanism to access the SQL Server database. But at the same time, DAX measure is there, and you can leverage all the DAX capabilities and all the optimization that comes from the dimensional or tabular model engine inside Power BI. It's faster actually to deal with data sets rather than dealing with Power BI tables directly. But the Power BI report will be based on the data set, not based on the tables. You still can access, yes, you still can directly access the tables in the SQL Server and Power BI as well, but it's not recommended because you already have a data set built on the top of that, which is more optimized and more performant compared to accessing the tables directly.
I'm Power BI administrator. So my question is it going to increase the use of the Power BI premium capacity if we open the door to let the users use this new feature?
Of course, because you cannot have this feature without either premium capacity, as I said, or premium per user at least.
Yes, we have it, but
Premium per user or capacity or premium capacity for the entire organization. I'm asking you, what's your organization license? Is it premium?
premium.
Premium like license. Okay. Okay. So if you have the premium license that everyone technically can build Power BI Datamart inside Power BI.
But the capacity is limited, right? We don't have unlimited capacity. So if people start to build data mart using Power BI desktop instead of going to the powerbi.com to build it, then if they are going to use more capacity than
Of course, capacity and the sizing, it's a very interesting topic. We can talk about. It's a different topics anyway, but the capacity and sizing of your what tier of your premium capacity that you have, it will have impact for sure. But we can talk about the capacity later on. That can be a separate topic, like sizing and capacity and limitations, etc. That can be a different session actually altogether. How much time? How long is the session? When are we supposed to finish? 15 minutes? 50? We still have 50 more minutes?
Total, you have 50 minutes. Total, you have 50. You have 15 minutes left.
50 minutes in total. And we should finish by one. When? 10, 10:40? Oh, okay, makes sense now. Thanks. Sorry, everyone, about this technical limitation here. Okay, guys, so the starting point here, sorry again about this interruption. So the starting point here is, as you see, we need to have a workspace first. That's the very starting point. Anyway, to deal with Power BI in the service, you need to create a workspace. There is no specific requirement for the workspace, except that it has to be premium. And as you see here in my Power BI service, all the workspaces, it has this diamond shape. That means it's already premium capacity. So I'll pick one that already created before the session for this particular event, SQL Server Day 2022. Here you go. No, that's not the one. SQL Server Day. Okay, here you go. Then from the menu here, and this is what now you will start to appreciate how easy to actually build the Power BI Datamart inside Power BI. All what you need to do is here, and this icon here, you can click new. And if you scroll down, you will see Datamart. By the way, I should have mentioned that it's still in preview. Preview means it's still work in progress. So it's not 100% production yet. So so this is a preview feature. So keep that in mind. I hope it will be released soon to become like a production feature. So once you click on that, it says creating Datamart. So during this step here, it's actually provisioning built-in, totally self-managed SQL Server inside Power BI. Boom, it's just created. So now I have in the Power BI service, SQL Server inside Power BI provisioned for me, totally managed by Power BI service. That's it. It's already there. So what is the next step after that is to fill this SQL Server with our data. So we need to extract the data from the data source and create our data mart now, or populate the data mart with the tables from the source. As you see here, we have so many options here. Data flow is one of them. So you still can build the data mart on the top of data flow, all right? Because data flow is one of the options that we have here. However, classical way, you still can use Excel. So instead of relying on separate Excel sheets as a data source for Power BI, no, you can now load all your Excel sheets across the organization from very, very different functional areas and host them into the data mart now, without the need to deal directly with those Excel sheets anymore. Or import data from SQL Server. It's not limited to any of those short access, because you still have access to all the other 160 different data sources that we have here. You can name it. So many options here to choose from. Just for the purpose of this demo, to keep it simple, my data warehouse, I'm assuming the source for my data warehouse is coming from Excel sheet or Excel file. So you can link the file or upload the file. So you can just go here, browse, and go to SQL Server Saturday. So my sample data set is based on the AdventureWorks, the popular Microsoft database. And this data set is publicly available, by the way. You can find it yourself. Then once I identified this source here, uploaded successfully, I go to the next step. Now it's giving me access to all the sheets that I have in my Excel file. Let us pick and choose a couple of, just as a sample. We talked about fact and dim. So the core value here when it comes to sales table is sales data mart is the sales table. And we can also pick a couple of dimensions like customer dimension, date dimension, product dimension. That can be enough for now. And as you see here, it gives me preview of every single data sheet that I have inside Excel file. Then I proceed with the transform data. So as you see here, that's the popular Power Query screen where I can do all the data manipulations and data transformation without the need to write any code at all. There is a code is being generated behind the scene when I do any interaction or data manipulation steps using the user interface. Do you know what is the code that is being generated from the Power Query tool? What language is that? Anyone? Should have quiz by end of this session. It's the M language. The M language is the language behind the Power Query editor. Where to access the M language, by the way, you don't need to understand how the M language works, but if you really need to interfere with the language, this is the script that is being generated with every single interaction that I have here in Power Query editor. So as you see here, I have access to all the data sheets, the tables from the data sheet that I selected, and you still can do any transformation steps. There are a couple of transformation steps were already done for me, but I can do any kind of transformation. I can merge columns, I can split columns, I can group by, or can add additional column. Like there are so many options here. I'll leave it to you guys to explore the capabilities of Power Query as a very powerful tool for data transformation, because it's very powerful. Let us say that I'm happy with the source data as it comes from the source, so I'm not interested to do any data transformation. And now it's actually what is doing in this process now, or step in the process now, it's ingesting the data from the Excel file and pushing it to now to the SQL server, the provision, the totally managed SQL server inside Power BI. So I have now creating a copy of those tables, creating physical tables in the SQL server inside Power BI. So as you see here, it's building the extract, transform, and load rules. If I have any rules to apply, then it's pushing the data now to those tables. Yeah,
What if we're working with confidential data?
excellent question. Just hold on, and I will talk about that in a second. Because that's one of the key values actually to have a data mart inside Power BI is to have the row level security now as part of our process. Because in the past, we can start dealing with row level security only when we have the data set. We cannot apply the row level security in the data flows. That was one of the limitations of the data flows. If you have access to data flow to anyone, there is no row level security involved in that step at all. We can only start building the row level security only after we have a data set. That is the old architecture. Now, as part of building the data mart itself, we can apply the row level security right from the beginning. And this will limit the access to certain people in the organization based on their credentials. So we don't have to wait to build the data set, because if you give access to data flow, that's it. You cannot implement any row level security. You cannot control what record based on your credentials in the data flow. Row level security was not part of the data flow at all. That was one of the limitations of the data flow. Once we have the data mart now, once we build the data mart, we can start right away implementing the row level security, even at the physical tables level, not at the data set level. I'll show that to you that in a minute. So as you see now, I have access to the physical table in Datamart. So what are those? Those are the physical table inside the SQL Server now. Physical tables. What else I can do here? I can also query these tables. So I can create a new query if I need to, or I can build also dimensional model as well. So in the same screen and the same environment, without leaving the environment, I can access directly those tables, write SQL statement against those tables, or I can build a dimensional model. Let us start with the queries first. Let us assume that I am a person who wants to write a quick query now to validate data or get very ad hoc request to answer certain questions. So I can switch to the query. And there are two ways here. Either to use the self-service capabilities to build the queries inside Power BI with the drag and drop option. Let us say that that's how I build the query, by the way. I'm dragging now table customer and table sales. Okay. If I need to do any transformation steps, I can keep adding more transformation steps in the middle in a very visual way, as you see. But let us say what I need to do now is I want to merge those two tables quickly and build the integration between those two tables. So I'll just go here, go to customer, sales. Then what is the common key between customer and sales table? Should be customer key. So I pick customer key from here, customer key from the sales table. Then if I scroll down here, as you see here, I have all the types of relationship: left outer, right outer, full outer, inner, left and anti, and right anti. So for the purpose of this demo, we can just do inner join. So, and it's a very nice visual way to pick and choose. And you can also apply fuzzy matching options if the data is not precisely the same value from the fact and dem. We still can apply some fuzzy matching, but that can be a different topics in another demo. But let us keep it simple now. I'm just clicking now, okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm building a query, actually, like a SQL query, but in a visual way. I don't need to write a SQL statement at all. So it's building, actually, I'm joining those two tables. And introducing a new table here, or new result, actually, for this merge table. based on the join condition that I identified in the visual. Showing here, it's telling me that I'm here. Yeah, sure.
At the output of that query, we can save it as a table in the Datamart, right?
Good question. No, no. Unfortunately, that's another limitation I should have mentioned. You cannot write a DDL statement in the SQL Server database inside Power BI. We cannot create a view. So far, that's a limitation, still in preview, remember. It could be different when we have the production version of the Datamart. But so far, we cannot create a table or create a view from Power BI. I think we can do that from the SQL Server Management Studio. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it myself. But this is not the intention of building this query here, is not to create a physical table or even building a view. The intention for having this query capabilities inside Power BI, as we see it now, is to give you a quick access to the data that you have in the SQL Server Power BI for quick data validation and ad hoc inquiries, but not to build a physical view. I hope in the future we will be able actually, okay, so, since we have the query already identified, I hope in the future right click, save it as a view, for example, or a physical table. I hope that will happen in the future. But so far, that is not the intent or the purpose of having this query inside Power BI, just for inquiries option only. Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat that? But I don't think this is a physical table. As far as I know, it's not a physical table. I think it's like it will be vanished if you finish this query. It's not physically you cannot access it. Like there is no name for this table. It didn't ask us for identifying any name or something. I think it will create like a temporary table behind the scene, but this table is not accessible from the reporting side or from Power BI side. It's not. You will not see a report, physical report, as a result of this query. Unfortunately, this is the situation so far. And I know that I had the same issue and the same concern as well. I put already effort here to build this. I need to save it, or I build like a view or a physical table, etc., because that can save my work and make it easier for reporting purposes. But they said for now is this option is not available for us. Uh, it's not storing it anywhere. That's true. I think it will take the same time every time I query it, as far as I know. But remember, guys, this is still in preview feature, so I'm not sure if this will be the situation after, again, we switch to the production or not. Just keep that in mind. Yeah. It totally self-managed. So it takes that into consideration. It's totally optimized, managed behind the scene with no control from you on the SQL Server at all. It's totally managed by Power BI. Is optimizing the whole provision, automatically provision database behind the scene for you. So you don't have to have like database administrator mindset to deal with this SQL Server at all. That's not the purpose. It's the purpose here is to have this fully autonomous, fully self-service. Yeah, as I said, it's totally self-managed. So you don't have access to particular aspect of it. But again, that could be a limitation for now because it's still in preview feature, but just keep monitoring the progress and the roadmap of these features. When it becomes like for release, I'm hoping actually we will have more control over optimizing this database here. But I'm not sure why it's taking longer time here, but let me show you another capability here quickly when it comes to the query. because also inside Power BI for the very first time, we can also write a SQL query inside Power BI. Guess here, see what? I can start writing my select statement here and run the query. Okay, let us have a quick query here. Let us say I want to run this query. See, I'm writing now a SQL statement inside Power BI. Quick data validation, quick response, and if I'm comfortable with writing a SQL statement, I'm actually writing the SQL statement for the first time ever in the whole Power BI evolution journey. We are able now to write a SQL statement inside Power BI in the same environment without leaving the environment. What is the third view that I have here? By the way, if we have this, I'm not sure why this is taking longer time, but this should give us the same result. But yeah,
Arrive to the decision of allowing SQL on the BI platform after spending so many years with DAX and M language and the like.
mhm. That's not the question for me. I'm not Microsoft person. That should be the Microsoft engineering team to answer this question. But there is a history behind that because Power BI evolved from so many services, disconnected services from each other until we become Power BI the same way we see it today. It started with the Excel services, by the way, and Power Pivot in Excel, with the dimensional model, then they integrated Power Query as a separate product and tool, and they started to combine all those disconnected services together to build the Power BI. But now I think it's more evolving actually toward like having one unified experience from end to end. And this is actually the good starting point now is the Datamart, because as you see, I'm not using Power BI desktop. I'm actually building everything on the service and the cloud, and I have access to every single aspect of the steps in the process. So I can access the physical table, I can write SQL statement on the table, and if you wait for one more second, I will show also in the same environment. I know that there is a question here, but just to close the circle here. So you saw that I have access to the disconnected table and I can write a SQL statement either in a visual way or write a SQL statement. Now, what is here? It's building the data model. It's building the dimensional model inside the service without the need to get the data in Power BI desktop. That was not possible in the past. We had to do this step and build this dimensional model inside Power BI desktop before we push it to the service again. That's the first time now we can build a dimensional model into, just a second, please, into the service here. So what I have here is those physical tables inside the SQL Server, inside Power BI. What I'm building now is I'm building tabular model on the service and the same experience without leaving any the experience at all. Where is my fact table? This is my fact table. And what is the customer key? And yep, customer key and customer key. I'm building what? A relationship model now inside the service. So customer and sales, many to one, confer, assume referential integrity if I want. Let us keep it simple for now. Actually, this should be the other way around. One to many, confirm, and so on. Date key and order date key. So I'm building now what? A data set, tabular model inside Power BI. So, and let me finish this, then I can show it to you. Yep. Could be, sorry, the other way around as well. Then the last step here is product key, and product key. See, now I have a dimensional tabular model inside Power BI. So I just created what we call it in the past data set in the same environment. Okay. What else I can do here? See here in the menu, new measure. What is new measure now is supposed to do is I can write DAX statement, sorry, DAX code here as well in the same environment. See, in the same screen, like one tab I was writing a SQL statement, and the second tab I was writing SQL, DAX syntax here. So we can say total sales. And once I start to type here, sum, and this is the DAX sum of sales amount. So now I can have all my measures centralized already in the Datamart. Once I have that, so that means in the Datamart, I have the physical version of the tables. You saw that already, those guys here. And also I have the dimensional model already with all the measures created into the centralized database. Then we can also manage the roles here with the role level security. Yeah. And that will be implemented across the board. So, and this is, again, this is the beauty of it. I know we are out of time, but in the same environment, I'm creating the report as well. So now, as you see, the whole cycle from end to end, I'm building it inside Power BI without the need to build any extraction packages outside Power BI, without using ADF or any other the ETL tools. I'm building accessing the data tables, physical data table inside Power BI data model, and I'm building the report on the top of that. I have access to the dimensional model with the measures that I created here. And last but not least, if I go to the workspace, if I go to Datamart, settings, and as you see here, server settings, what is that URL? This URL now, it's endpoint URL. So you can take that and access it from a SQL Server Management Studio or any other tool that will give you direct access to the physical table in the SQL Server inside Power BI. I hope you understand the whole spectrum here or the process from end to end. And sorry about taking longer time, and thanks everyone. If you have any quick question, yeah, go ahead.
Since it's a unique system, is there any performance benchmarking built into it to figure out whether it's worth doing it or not?
So I cannot hear you,
Is there
sorry.
any performance benchmarking built into it?
Performance benchmarking?
The SQL searches, the queries you're running, is there any way to figure out if it's fast enough? What if it's really slow? Is there any way to optimize it? Is there any way to?
As I said, it's totally managed by the Power BI service for now. I'm not sure if in the future we will have more access and more control over optimizing the performance of this or not. I cannot tell that because I'm not aware of the product roadmap. But it should be optimized for best performance.
Question. So the data refresh is going to be two steps, refresh the data map and refresh the data set, or refresh the data map, the data set is going to be, the data
I
going to be.
think the data set will be automatically refreshed
Automatically.
based
Oh,
on
you
the refresh
don't-
of the data mart.
There won't be in sync problem, right?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, because it has to be consistent. The data set is
Yeah,
always consistent with the physical tables that we have.
Okay, got it.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.